There is really no fixing it later. A few decades of warming could commit the planet to that change that would play out over centuries.
It is dramatic, but it's also almost doubly dramatic because it's not too late to turn this around, so it's our choice.
Welcome to Science Forward, the podcast of the UN Secretary General's Scientific Advisory Board. I'm Julia.
And I'm Adam. Today we're talking about tipping points. Some of us might be familiar with the term. A tipping point is when we reach some kind of critical threshold where there is no turning back, where something takes off, it goes viral, it accelerates, and it becomes unstoppable.
But what happens when a major part of our planet reaches a tipping point? What happens to our oceans when global warming reaches a point where our ice sheets can't refreeze each year? What are the effects of entire coral reef systems beginning to die off because the ocean has gotten too warm or rainforests transition into grasslands?
This might sound like science fiction or something that might happen in the distant future. But UN Secretary General Guterres' speech at London Climate Action Week this July suggests we might be reaching tipping points on our planet sooner than you think.
Every fraction of a degree matters. Every moment counts. Because the higher and longer the overshoot, the greatest the risk of crossing planetary tipping points that trigger irreversible change. The Earth's tipping points are like objects in a car mirror. They are far closer than they appear.
In fact, it's possible that global warming has made us cross some of the most important thresholds that have kept our planet stable for tens of thousands of years.
To understand how tipping points work, what we know about them today, and what we can still do to stop going over the brink, we spoke with the world's leading Earth system scientist, Johan Rockström, and UN Environment Program Executive Director, Inger Andersen.
My name is Inger Andersen. It's a soft G, by the way. Inger rhymes with singer. And I am the Executive Director at UNEP.
Inger leads the UN Environment Program, the body that oversees how the UN system can respond to the triple planetary threats of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution.
Johan leads the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and is the most cited environmental scientist in the world on the question of tipping points. But when I asked him about what he might have become if he'd taken a different path, his answer surprised me. Somehow, it still came back to nature.
I cannot see myself doing something else. I not only love what I'm doing, but also think it's the most important thing I can do. But you know what? I would probably be a farmer, to be honest. I'm
a farmer, okay.
Yeah, I have this passion for everything that farmers represent, producing the foundations for human health, our food, and to do it in harmony with nature and working with plants, land, water, biodiversity, livestock. I have great respect for farmers.
Wow, yeah, and it's very hands-on.
Very hands-on.
Yeah.
Johan is internationally known for his work on planetary boundaries, the scientific attempt to define a safe operating space for humanity on Earth.
To understand tipping points, we first need to understand what scientists mean by the Earth system.
Our planet is a complex, self-regulating system that has biological, chemical, and physical components, and these are like organs in our body. So think of the planet being an equivalent of our bodies with our lungs and our heart and our liver and our kidneys. Well, the planet has its big ecosystems on land, the marine ecosystems in the ocean, the ice sheets, the atmosphere, the stratosphere, and the biosphere. And together, these form a system. And it's a system that interacts. And the interactions are so profound that they actually regulate the state of the entire system.
Just like a human body, these organs keep the planet functioning in a healthy, stable way. The forests and the ocean are like lungs, breathing in carbon dioxide and exhaling oxygen. The ice sheets are kind of like a skin, helping to regulate the planet's temperature. The air, water, earth, and ice seem to work together like a planetary immune system. And for thousands of years, this has meant the Earth has remained relatively stable, giving human societies the chance to develop and thrive.
The planet, our home, is this beautiful blue marble that has been stable since we left the last ice age. The climate has varied within a very, very narrow range. Everything that we know over the past 12,000 years, occurred within that very narrow corridor, which I call the corridor of life. And now we're kicking ourselves out of that corridor.
It's a surprisingly small range of temperature that can support the kind of flourishing we've seen on planet Earth for the last 12,000 years. But 12,000 years of relative stability does not mean our planet can handle endless pressure.
If we get too near the edge of that corridor, if systems like our ice sheets, our rainforests, and our coral reefs begin to destabilize, the change can become irreversible and impossible to stop. This is the tipping point.
One way that is sometimes described is you're in this canoe and you're going nicely along the water, and then you lean out a little bit, and then you can still get it upright, but there comes a point where you will tip. And the same principle is in the Earth system, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the geosphere, and the biosphere, in that you can emit too much CO2 and other greenhouse gases, and you will see ice sheets melt. And there comes a point where the self-generation of that process will make that continue. You can't pull the handbrake, sort of thing. You can't correct yourself with the paddle.
Leaning out a little bit doesn't immediately tip the canoe. But once it passes a certain point, its own weight and its momentum take over. Water rushes in and the canoe flips over, even if you stop leaning.
Something similar can happen to parts of the Earth system. After a certain threshold is crossed, the system may no longer respond in the way it did before. It may continue to shift into a new state, even if nothing else changes.
We know what a tipping point is when we're speaking about a species. It goes extinct, and there's no way back. It is the same with the bigger climate-driven tipping point, in that once you're beyond, pulling it back to what it was is not possible. It has come into something new. It doesn't mean the end of the world, but it does mean a different dynamic for human existence.
That last distinction is important. A tipping point is not a Hollywood-style ending of all human life on Earth, but it does indicate that a system has begun to change on its own and might keep changing without any further pressure. But what actually pushes something like an ice sheet or a rainforest from one state into another? One of the most important concepts here is the feedback loop.
Now, feedback loops can be good. For example, when our bodies start to overheat, our sweat is the feedback that helps us get back to a stable temperature. Ice sheets have feedback loops that help them maintain the thickness of the ice. Oceans have feedback processes that maintain their temperature. But as Johan explains, feedback can also cause systems to destabilize, like in the Amazon rainforest. Normal, stable rainforests produce and absorb moisture, but as global temperatures increase, that becomes harder.
So the feedback is this self-wetting capacity of this moist rainforest. You destroy that, and at a very specific point, that shuts down. Bang! You cross a tipping point. And the feedback turns from self-wetting to self-drying. The system starts becoming increasingly dry instead of being increasingly wet. And the system turns into a savanna, because savannas have a feedback, which is that they are self-regulated in a dry condition. And that is what defines a tipping point, when a feedback shifts direction from keeping it in a stable, healthy state to shifting it over into a degraded, unhealthy state.
Each system is different, but each one stabilizes through feedback. Ice sheets reflect light, allowing them to cool off and regain ice thickness. Ocean currents carry warm, salty water from the equator northward, where it cools and sinks, creating a stable circulation. The algae in the ocean breathes in carbon dioxide, helping to maintain stable levels of oxygen in the atmosphere.
This also means that Earth's subsystems are interconnected. A change in one region can affect another system thousands of kilometers away. Scientists call that a tipping cascade. It's like dominoes, where change in one area causes change in another. Johan gives the example of ice melting.
When the temperatures are rising and the Arctic is melting, it adds more fresh water, and fresh water then dilutes the saline water, so the water in the surface gets less heavy, so it sinks much slower. And when that happens, it will have a knock-on effect on the monsoon systems. And the monsoon systems provide the ocean contribution of rainfall to the rainforest in West Africa and in the Amazon, which would then accelerate the drying out and the risk of crossing a tipping point in the Amazon rainforest.
Greenland ice melts and dumps massive amounts of cold water into the Atlantic.
Domino 1.
This sudden influx of fresh water disrupts the usual circulation of warm water from the equator.
Domino 2.
Rain patterns shift because heat gets trapped in the southern hemisphere, so rainy seasons don't land when and where they used to in the Amazon.
Domino 3.
Without its usual rain, the Amazon begins to transform into a savanna.
Everything is interconnected, which means that when one part of the planet begins to destabilize, the rest might too. This can lead to a major problem for humans because we rely on a stable, predictable planet for just about everything.
Every civilization is based on predictability. Even if you're hunter-gatherers, the animals will move at this time. So we're all making a massive assumption about stability of the Earth system. And that stability is not given. It wasn't always like that. We live within this 2-degree variation. And it's that stability of the 2 degrees that has enabled humans to multiply, to develop, to do sedentary agriculture, and to be where we are today. The moment that the big food systems can no longer rely on natural rain in a predictable manner, well, then humanity is in very, very deep trouble.
Agriculture relies on seasons, rainfall, and temperatures remaining within familiar ranges. Remove that reliability, and it becomes much harder to know what can be grown, where it can be grown, or when a harvest will arrive.
And one of the most dangerous aspects of tipping points is that irreversible change can start today, but only unfold over long periods of time. So we might cross a threshold and not even notice it at first.
It's important also to remind all the listeners that if you do press that on button on the Greenland ice sheet, 7 meters sea level rise, that would of course not melt overnight. It's not like a tsunami that would hit us. It may take 1,000 years for that chunk of ice to completely melt, but it would be unstoppable. We would be handing over to all future generations a less and less and less and less livable planet. In my view, completely unacceptable.
The danger is therefore not only what happens today. It is committing future generations to a change they may no longer be able to stop.
And for some systems like coral reefs, there may be no option to fix it later.
You lose an entire reef, which has been built up over millennia by these micro-species. It doesn't just pounce right back. This takes centuries and millennia to be reconstructed. And it's therefore that we have to take these actions now.
I think this gets to the core challenge of tipping points. We're here, living in the present, buying cars, running air conditioners, and building roads. Our present human activity is having an immediate impact that may drive us over a tipping point. In some cases, it may have already happened. And that tipping point could undo millions of years of careful evolution, causing instabilities that last for generations to come.
Scientists do not know the exact threshold for every tipping point. They cannot always tell us the precise year in which a system might collapse.
But even if there is uncertainty about the exact timing and thresholds, it is absolutely clear that human activity is a major cause of the system-level changes we're seeing today.
There's high confidence that these Earth system shifts, let's call them that for a moment, rise with additional warming. And there's fairly high confidence that irreversible change in the human time scale, if I can say it that way, in some of these systems will be felt. We mentioned coral bleaching as some example. But where we maybe are still to get better science and where we don't know enough is what is a precise threshold at which these shifts, tipping points, would be experienced. And this is where the uncertainty ranges come in. The timing of these transitions is not so clear.
Scientists can see where the changes are heading and understand many of the physical mechanisms. What remains much harder is identifying the exact point at which a particular system will tip. As Johan put it very simply,
there is, as often in these complex, large risk assessments, uncertainty. But there's little uncertainty with regard to the need to urgently act to avoid taking what I would call unacceptable risks.
Uncertainty is not a reason for inaction. It should be what keeps us all up at night. When the consequences are as huge and irreversible as planetary tipping points, where the fate of humanity for generations to come is at stake, uncertainty should be what makes us take faster and more decisive action.
Even though the recent findings on tipping points are frightening, the main point is that we need to act today. For every 1/10 of a degree of global warming we can prevent, the risks of crossing critical limits goes down.
Every fraction of a degree matters because it reduces the scale of the impacts and it lowers the risk of triggering multiple tipping points at the same time.
if we do act, which we can do, in 50 years' time, we would have largely a healthy, green global economy powered by electricity, hydro. There might be some nuclear, and you will have a myriad of different biotechnological solutions. And you'll have a very, very strong integration of nature and urban areas because we are rapidly understanding the need to invest more in restoring nature for human health and for planetary health.
None of those actions is simple, but the pathway is clear and the technologies are there. The remaining uncertainty is largely about how quickly the systems will respond.
From the melting Arctic to fires in the Amazon and moving ice in Antarctica, tipping points can feel distant, but their consequences are connected to all of us. And maybe that's the hopeful message in tipping points. If we can cause huge damage, we might also be able to make significant positive change as well.
Every step we take, every human being matters here in terms of how we vote, how we speak to our friends, how we consume, how we transport ourselves. Everything matters. And that this transition is not a sacrifice, it's a path to a more modern, prosperous, and equitable future.
And on that positive note, you've been listening to Science Forward.
Curious to learn more? Check out the show notes for links to the work of the UN Secretary General's Scientific Advisory Board and its science brief on Earth's system tipping points. And stay connected with us on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.